And we at part 4, promissory notes. Definition 176.1. A promissory note is an unconditional promise in writing made by one person to another person, signed by the maker, engaging to pay on demand or at a fixed or determinable future time a sum certain in money to or to the order of a specified person or to bearer. Endorsed by maker. 2. An instrument in the form of a note payable to the maker's order is not a note without the meaning of this section unless it is endorsed to the maker, by the maker, endorsed by the maker, unless it is endorsed by the maker. Pledge of collateral security. 3. A note is not invalid by reason only that it contains also a pledge of collateral security with authority to sell or dispose thereof. I'm going to read that one over. Pledge of collateral security. 3. A note is not invalid by reason only that it contains also a pledge of collateral security with authority to sell or dispense thereof. Inland Note 177. 1. A note that is or on the face of it purports to be both made and payable within Canada is an inland note. Foreign note. 2. Any other note is a foreign note. Any other note is a foreign. Delivery. 178. A note is inchoate and incomplete until delivery thereof to a payee or bearer. We're going to look up that word inchoate whenever the phone come on, but I'm going to keep going. Joint and several liability. 179. 1. A note may be made by 2 or more makers, and they may be liable thereon jointly or jointly and severally according to its tenor. Individual promise. 2. Where a note bears the words I promise to pay and is signed by 2 or more persons, it is deemed to be their joint or several note. Legal definition of inchoate. It says, in other words, it means something that has begun but has not been completed, such as a potential crime for which all the elements have not been accomplished, or a contract that has not been formalized. Similar, inchoate right is a right which has not matured. So something that has begun but has not been completed. All right. Demand note presented. 181. I hope that's where I was. But anyway, where a note payable on demand has not, I'll redact that. 181. Where a note payable on demand has been endorsed, it must be presented for payment within a reasonable time of the endorsement. Reasonable time. 2. In determining what is a reasonable time, regard shall be had to the nature of the instrument, the usage of trade, and the fact of the particular case. Endorser discharge. 181. Where a note payable on demand that has been endorsed is not presented for payment within a reasonable time, the endorser is discharged, but if it has, with the assent of the endorser, been delivered as a collateral and continuing security, it need not be presented for payment so long as it is held as such security, not deemed overdue. 182. Where a note payable on demand is negotiated, it is not deemed to be overdue for the purpose of affecting the holder with defects of title of which he had no notice, but reason that it appears that a reasonable time for presenting it for payment has lapsed since its issue. Presentment at particular place. 183. 1. Where a note is in the body of it made payable at a particular place, it must be presented for payment at that place. Liability of maker. 2. In the case described in subsection 1, the maker is not discharged by the omission to present the note for payment on the day that it matures, but if any suit or action is instituted thereon against him, before presentation, the cause thereof are in the discretion of the court. Note payable generally. 3. When no place of payment is specified in the body of the note, presentment for payment is not necessary in order to render the maker liable. Liability of endorser. 184. 1. Presentment for payment is necessary in order to render the endorser of the note liable. Presentment for payment is necessary in order to render the endorser of the note liable. Presentment at particular place. 2. Where a note is in the body of it made payable at a particular place, presentment at the place is necessary in order to render an endorser liable. Presentment elsewhere. 3. When a place of payment is indicated by way of memorandum only, presentment at that place is sufficient to render the endorser liable, but a presentment to the maker elsewhere, if sufficient in other respects, shall also suffice. Effect of being maker. 135. The maker of a note, by making it, A. engages that he will pay it according to its tenor, or B. is precluded from denying to a holder in due course the existence of the payee and his then capacity to endorse. Application of Act to Note. 186. 1. Subject to this part, and except as provided by this section, the provisions of this act relating to bills apply, with such modifications as the circumstances require. 2 notes, terms corresponding to, in the application of the provisions of this act relating to bills, the maker of a note shall be deemed to correspond with the acceptor of a bill, and the first endorser of a note shall be deemed to correspond with the drawer of an accepted bill payable to drawer's order. Provisions inapplicable. 3. The provisions of this act with respect to bills and relating to A. presentment for acceptance, B. acceptance, C. acceptance under protest, and D. bills in a set do not apply to notes. Protests of foreign notes. 187. Where a foreign note is discharged, protest thereof is unnecessary, except for the preservation of the liabilities of endorsers. Part 5. Consumer bills and notes. Consumer bills and notes. Definitions 188. In this part, consumer purchase mean a purchase other than a cash purchase for goods and services or an agreement to purchase goods and services. A. By an individual other than for resale or for use in the course of his business, profession, or calling. And B. From a person who is engaged in the business of selling or providing those goods and services. Goods means any article that is or may be the subject of trade or commerce, but does not include land or any interest therein. Purchaser means the individual by whom the consumer purchase is made. Seller means the person from whom the consumer purchase is made. Service includes repairs and improvements. Consumer bill 189. 1. A consumer bill is a bill of exchange issued in respect of a consumer purchase and on which the purchaser or any person signing to accommodate the purchaser is liable as a party, but does not include a check that is dated the date of its issue or prior thereto, or at the time it is issued is post-dated not more than 30 days, or B, a bill of exchange that I or one would be a check within the means of Section 165 before the fact that the party on which it is drawn is a financial institution other than a bank that as part of its business accepts money on deposit from members of the public and honors any such bill directed to be paid out of any such deposit to the extent of the amount of the deposit, and II or 2 is dated the date of its issue or prior thereto, or at the time it is issued is post dated not more than 30 days. Consumer note 2. A consumer note is a promissory note. A. Issued in respect of a consumer purchase, and B. On which the purchaser or anyone signing to accommodate him is liable as a party. Presumption as to issue. 3. Without limiting or restricting the circumstances in which, for the purposes of this part, a bill of exchange or a promissory note shall be considered to be issued in respect of a consumer purchase, a bill of exchange or a promissory note shall be conclusively presumed to be so issued if A. The consideration for its issue was the lending or advancing of money or other valuable security by the person other than a seller in order to enable the purchaser to make the consumer purchase, and B. The seller and the person who lent or advanced the money or other valuable security where at the time the bill or note was issued, not dealing with each other at arm's length within the meaning of the Income Tax Act, application of Act to consumer bills and notes. 4. Except as otherwise provided in this part, the provisions of this act applicable to bills of exchange and checks apply with such modifications as the circumstances require to consumer bills, and those applicable to promissory notes apply to consumer notes with such modifications as the circumstances require. Consumer bill or note to be marked. 191. Every consumer bill or consumer note shall be prominently and eligibly marked on its face with the words consumer purchase before or at the time when the instrument is signed by the purchaser or by any person signing to accommodate the purchaser. Effect where not marked. 2. A consumer bill or consumer note that is not marked as required by this section is void, except in the hands of the holder in due course without notice that the bill or note is a consumer bill or consumer note, or except as against the drawee without that notice. Rights of holder of consumer bill or note. 191. Notwithstanding any agreement to the contrary, the right of a holder of a consumer bill or consumer note that is marked as required by Section 190 to have the whole or any part thereof paid by the purchaser or any party signing to accommodate the purchaser is subject to any defense or right of set-off other than counterclaim that the purchaser would have had in an action by the seller on a consumer bill or consumer note, obtaining signature to unmarked instrument. 192. 1. Every person who, knowing that an instrument other than an instrument described in paragraph 189 1A or B has been, is being, or is to be issued in respect of a consumer purchase, contain the signatures of the purchaser or of any person signing to accommodate the purchaser to that instrument without its being or having been marked as required by Section 190 is guilty of A. An offense and liable on summary conviction of a fine not exceeding $1,000, or B, an indictable offense and liable to a fine not exceeding $5,000. Transfer on unmarked consumer bill or note. 2. Every person who, knowing that a consumer bill or consumer note not marked as required by Section 190 is a consumer bill or consumer note, transfer it is, unless he is the purchaser or any person signing signing to accommodate the purchase, guilty of A, an offense and liable to summary conviction of a fine exceeding $1,000, or B, an indictable offense and liable to a fine not exceeding $5,000. I don't know if I said that one over, but the same thing is the same thing on 2 and 192 1 and 192 2. I'm gonna read 2 over. Every person who, knowing that the consumer bill or consumer note not marked as required by Section 190 is a consumer bill or consumer note, transfer it is, unless he is the purchaser or any person signing to accommodate the purchaser, guilty of A, an offense and liable of summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $1,000, or B, an indictable offense and liable to a fine not exceeding $5,000. Schedule, Section 124, Form 1. The rest of these are forms. I'm not going to read it, but you can check it out. Form number 1, noting for non-acceptance. And like I say, this coming from this guy who's reading the Bill of Exchange on YouTube. This is his stuff. So I'm just reading from it, but it's not his stuff because it's the Canadian act, the Canadian version of the act, but it's his YouTube page that I'm reading from. I'm thankful for him too. Appreciate you reading it for us, man. Form number 2, protest for non-acceptance or for non-payment of a bill payable generally. That's this form number 2. This is form number 3, protest for non-acceptance or for non-payment of a bill payable at the state place. Got all the forms already for you, man. Form 4, protest for non-payment of a bill noted, but not protested for non-acceptance. Form 5, protest for non-payment of a note payable generally. Already done for you. See that guy who's reading? I will have the description at the bottom. So in case you want to go to his for the reading. Form 6, protest for non-payment of a note payable at a state place. Form number 7, notarial notice of a noting or of a protest for non-acceptance or of a protest for non-payment of a bill. The notarial one? Yes, the notarial one. And they got 1 and 2. First, second. That's the second. Form number 8, notarial notice of protest for non-payment of a note. Form number 9, notarial service of notice of a protest for non-acceptance or non-payment of a bill or a note. Form number 10, protest by justice of the peace where there is no notary for non-acceptance of a bill or non-payment of a bill or a note. And that's it for the Bill of Exchange Act, the Canadian version, Bill of Exchange Act 1985. An act relating to bills of exchange, checks, and promissory notes. That's it for that reading. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate everything. Peace and blessings, prosperity and abundance. Bills of Exchange Act.